Leonardo was born into a landscape that did not demand attention. Rolling hills stretched outward without urgency. Stone paths curved rather than rushed. Olive trees stood in no particular hurry to grow. The world into which he arrived did not announce itself loudly. It waited. From the beginning, Leonardo seemed attuned to this waiting. He was born in the small Tuscan town of Vinci, surrounded by open land, distant mountains, and skies that changed slowly across the day. There were no great crowds, no grand buildings pressing close. Space existed here, and in that space, time moved gently. As a child, Leonardo spent long hours outdoors, not wandering far, but lingering. He did not need constant movement. Stillness was not uncomfortable for him. He would sit beneath trees and watch shadows shift across the ground. He noticed how the shape of shade never remained the same for very long, how it thinned and thickened as the sun drifted overhead. He did not chase the shadow. He simply observed it. Other children often filled their days with noise, laughter, games, arguments that rose and fell quickly. Leonardo, instead, often stayed just outside these circles, not removed, but slightly apart. It was not loneliness. It was preference. He listened more than he spoke. He noticed before he acted. When he walked, he did not hurry. His feet followed paths that curved naturally through the land, worn smooth by time rather than force. He watched ants cross stones warmed by the sun. He traced the way a leaf floated downward, turning slowly in the air before coming to rest. There was something about movement that fascinated him. Not speed, but transition. How one thing became another. He watched clouds stretch and dissolve without leaving evidence of where they had been. He noticed how water never resisted gravity, yet always found its own way. Streams did not rush in straight lines. They curved, they paused, they adapted. Leonardo absorbed these lessons quietly. No one needed to explain them to him. In the evenings, when the air cooled and the land softened into dusk, he noticed how sound changed. Birds settled, insects replaced them. Footsteps became more noticeable in the stillness. He learned that silence was never empty. It simply held quieter details. This way of seeing would stay with him for the rest of his life. As a boy, Leonardo was not particularly concerned with mastery or achievement. He did not measure his days by what was completed. Instead, he measured them by what had been noticed. A strange stone shape, a bird's wing folding inward, the way smoke drifted upward before disappearing. These small observations accumulated gently like layers of sediment. His curiosity did not arrive in bursts. It unfolded. Adults sometimes mistook his quietness for distraction. They saw him staring into space, his attention seemingly unfocused. But inside, his mind was anything but empty. It moved slowly, carefully, examining what others passed by too quickly to register. He was learning the world's patterns long before he tried to describe them. Leonardo's early life did not pressure him into rigid expectations. His upbringing allowed room for wandering, not just physically but mentally. This freedom mattered. It gave his curiosity space to breathe. When he encountered unfamiliar objects, he did not ask what they were for right away. He asked how they behaved. If he picked up a feather, he noticed how it resisted falling. If he handled clay, he felt how it yielded under pressure. Touch, sight, sound, all were forms of learning. He did not separate thinking from sensing. This habit, formed quietly in childhood, shaped everything that followed. He was especially drawn to water. Streams near his home offered endless fascination. He watched how water curved around obstacles rather than colliding with them. He noticed ripples spreading outward, intersecting, softening each other. Water taught him patience. It never rushed, yet it always arrived. Sometimes he followed a stream until it widened and slowed, collecting reflections of the sky. He leaned over the surface, watching his own face distort gently with the movement. He did not correct it. He observed it. Even then, he seemed comfortable with imperfection. Leonardo did not grow restless easily. He could stay with a single thought for long stretches of time, allowing it to deepen on its own. He trusted that understanding would come without force. This trust was rare. As he grew older, his curiosity did not fade. It widened. He became interested not only in what things looked like, but in why they looked that way. Why leaves grew in certain patterns. Why animals moved as they did. Why light softened at the edges of objects instead of stopping sharply. He did not seek quick answers. Questions were enough. Often he carried these questions quietly, letting them return again and again. He revisited the same observations across different days, different seasons. The world changed slightly each time, and so did his understanding. There was comfort in this repetition. Leonardo learned early that knowledge did not arrive all at once. It arrived in fragments, layered gently over time. This approach protected him from urgency. He was not in a hurry to become someone else. He was content becoming more attentive to who he already was. In moments of solitude, he felt no need to fill the silence. Silence itself felt like a companion, one that allowed thoughts to unfold naturally. This childhood habit of watching quietly became the foundation of his life's work. But at this stage, it was simply a way of being. No ambition, no performance, just attention. And attention, when given patiently, transforms into understanding. As the years passed, Leonardo's surroundings continued to teach him without instruction. The land itself became his earliest teacher. The hills taught him scale, the wind taught him motion, the sky taught him impermanence. He learned that nothing remained fixed. Not clouds, not light, not thoughts. This realization did not trouble him. It calmed him. He accepted change as a natural rhythm, something to observe rather than resist. When night fell, he noticed how darkness did not erase the world. It simply softened it. Shapes remained, but their edges blurred. The day released its hold gently. These evenings shaped his inner pace, slow, reflective, unforced. Leonardo did not yet know that this way of seeing would one day influence art, science, and countless observers who came after him. He did not need to know, for now it was enough to watch. And so as a child he lived not loudly but attentively. The world moved. He noticed. And in that noticing, a lifelong rhythm began. Leonardo did not move quickly through learning. He never believed that knowledge needed to be captured all at once. He allowed it to arrive gradually, in pieces small enough to hold comfortably. As he grew older, the world around him began to change in subtle ways. Responsibilities increased, expectations appeared, yet his inner pace remained steady, untouched by pressure. Learning for Leonardo was not a race toward mastery. It was a quiet conversation with the world. He listened more than he asserted. When others spoke, he watched their hands as much as their words. He noticed how craftsmen held tools, how pressure shifted from finger to palm, how years of repetition shaped movement into something fluid and economical. These were lessons not written down. They were absorbed. Leonardo entered apprenticeship not as someone eager to prove himself, but as someone content to observe. He stood beside those more experienced than him, often silent, absorbing the rhythm of work. He did not interrupt often. He did not demand explanation. He trusted that understanding would emerge naturally through time and attention. The workshops he spent time in were filled with quiet sounds, the scraping of metal, the brushing of pigment, the slow rhythm of breath as someone concentrated deeply. Leonardo felt at home in these spaces. They were places where time stretched. He watched pigments being mixed carefully, water added drop by drop, never rushed. Colors were not forced into being, they were coaxed. This appealed to him. He learned that preparation mattered as much as execution, that the quiet moments before work began were just as important as the act itself. Often he lingered near windows, watching how light entered a room. He noticed how it changed across the day, how it softened textures and altered color without touching the objects themselves. Light, he realized, was an active participant in learning. He did not hurry to draw conclusions from what he saw. Instead, he returned to the same observations again and again. He noticed differences, subtle shifts. This repetition was not boredom. It was refinement. Leonardo did not memorize information in the traditional sense. He experienced it. He let knowledge settle into him slowly, becoming part of how he perceived the world. When he practiced writing, he did so carefully. His letters were deliberate, formed with attention rather than speed. He often wrote from right to left, not as a trick, but because it felt natural to him. The act of writing itself was part of learning. Ink flowed, paper resisted slightly, mistakes remained visible. He did not erase easily. Mistakes were not failures, they were evidence of thought in motion. Leonardo accepted imperfection calmly. He understood that clarity emerged through trial, not certainty. If something did not make sense immediately, he did not force it. He allowed confusion to exist without judgment. He trusted that insight would come later, perhaps during a walk, or while observing something unrelated. This patience set him apart. Many learners sought completion. Leonardo sought familiarity. He wanted to know how something behaved over time, not just how it appeared once. He paid close attention to structure, not rigid structure, but underlying patterns, the way bones supported flesh, the way arches carried weight, the way muscles relaxed after effort. He did not separate physical learning from intellectual understanding. The body, he believed, was a form of knowledge. In moments when others hurried through tasks, Leonardo slowed further. He examined the tools themselves, how they were shaped, how they wore down, how they fit the hand. Every object told a story. Even failure had its place. When something did not work, Leonardo did not grow restless. He examined the outcome quietly, noting what had changed, what remained. He was not discouraged by unfinished understanding. Incomplete knowledge felt natural. During lessons, he sometimes drifted into silence, his attention turning inward. He was not disengaged, he was integrating. The mind, he understood, needed moments of rest to absorb what it encountered. He allowed space between lessons, space for reflection, space for forgetting and remembering again. This rhythm of learning, encounter, pause, return, became familiar to him. Leonardo was not impressed by authority alone. He respected experience, but he trusted observation more. If a lesson contradicted what he saw with his own eyes, he made a note of it. Not to challenge, simply to remember. He believed truth revealed itself slowly, through repeated attention. In this way, his education was not linear. It branched, it wandered, it returned upon itself. He might study anatomy one day, then spend the next observing birds, then return to drawing, carrying insights from one domain into another. This cross-pollination happened quietly. No declarations, no announcements, just gradual enrichment. Leonardo learned that knowledge felt different when it was rushed. It became brittle, fragile, easily forgotten. But when learning was slow, it settled deeply. He could recall details years later, not as facts, but as impressions, as shapes, as movements. This made his understanding flexible, alive. He did not fear forgetting details. He trusted that what mattered would resurface when needed. Often, he learned best by watching others struggle. He noticed how impatience tightened movements, how haste led to mistakes. This observation reinforced his own preference for calm. He did not judge those who hurried. He simply chose differently. As time passed, Leonardo became known for his thoughtful pace. Some mistook it for indecision, others saw it as depth. Leonardo did not correct these perceptions. He was comfortable being misunderstood. He knew his rhythm worked for him. In quiet moments, he returned to earlier lessons, not to review them formally, but to feel them again. He revisited old sketches, old notes, old questions. Some still remained unanswered. This did not trouble him. Questions did not need immediate resolution. They could live quietly in the mind, unfolding slowly, changing shape over time. Leonardo believed that understanding matured like fruit. Too early, and it was unripe. Too forced, and it lost its sweetness. So he waited. He trusted the process. Learning, for him, was not accumulation. It was alignment between observation, curiosity, and patience. As he moved through these early years of learning, Leonardo did not see himself as becoming someone new. He felt he was becoming more attentive to what already surrounded him. The world was his teacher, and it spoke softly. He listened. Leonardo carried paper with him, not always neatly bound, sometimes loose sheets, sometimes folded pages tucked into pockets. The notebook was not an object of importance to him in the grand sense. It was simply a companion. He did not treat it with ceremony. He did not wait for the right moment to write. He wrote when something caught his attention, no matter how small. A shadow falling at an angle, the curve of a leaf, a question that arrived quietly and refused to leave. The notebook existed so these moments would not disappear. Leonardo did not separate drawing from writing. For him, they were expressions of the same curiosity. Lines could explain what words could not. Words could guide the eye to what the drawing suggested. Often, a page held both, sketches interwoven with notes, thoughts curling around images without rigid order. There was no need for organization. The notebook was not meant for others. It was meant for understanding. He wrote slowly, often pausing between words, not because he lacked clarity, but because he allowed thought to form fully before placing it on the page. His handwriting moved in reverse from right to left, a habit that came naturally. It slowed the process further, giving each line time to settle. Ink flowed softly. Mistakes remained. He did not cross out errors aggressively. Sometimes he left them untouched, reminders of earlier thinking. A notebook, he believed, should show the journey of thought, not just the destination. Many pages were filled with questions rather than answers. Why does water spiral when it flows? How does the eye perceive depth? What shape does sound take as it travels? These questions were not urgent. Leonardo did not demand solutions from himself. He allowed the questions to rest, sometimes for years. Returning to old notebooks, he found comfort in seeing how his thinking had evolved. Ideas once unclear gained shape over time. Some questions remained unresolved, and that was acceptable. The notebook was not a record of achievement. It was a record of attention. Leonardo wrote when he felt calm. He rarely wrote in moments of agitation. His best notes emerged during quiet observation. Sometimes he wrote while walking, stopping briefly to jot something down before continuing. Other times he wrote late at night, by candlelight. The room silent except for the scratch of pen on paper. These moments were intimate. The notebook allowed him to think without interruption. He did not write to impress. He wrote to clarify. Each page was a conversation with himself. He explored ideas gently, testing them without commitment. A sketch of a wing might sit beside a study of muscles. A note about water flow might accompany a drawing of hair. To Leonardo, all movement was related. He saw patterns repeating across nature. The notebook became a place where these patterns could be examined side by side. He did not rush to connect them. He simply placed them together and observed. Some pages were densely filled, others held only a few lines, surrounded by empty space. Leonardo valued this space. It gave thoughts room to breathe. He understood that creativity required quiet. Noise crowded the mind. Silence allowed it to expand. The notebook also served as a place of return. When Leonardo felt uncertain or unfocused, he opened an old page, not to find answers, but to reconnect with curiosity. Curiosity steadied him. It reminded him that not knowing was natural. He trusted that understanding would arrive in its own time. Leonardo did not keep a single notebook. Over his lifetime he filled many. Some were lost, some incomplete. He did not worry about preservation. The act of writing mattered more than the permanence of what was written. He believed that thinking left its mark on the mind, even if the paper disappeared. The notebook was a tool for presence. It anchored him to the moment. When his thoughts wandered too far ahead, writing brought him back. When his attention scattered, the page gathered it gently. He wrote about anatomy, but also about weather, about light, about emotions. He observed how mood influenced perception, how fatigue altered detail, how calm sharpened awareness. The notebook became a mirror of his inner state. He noticed that on days when he felt rested, his lines were steady. On restless days, they wavered. He did not correct this. It was information. Leonardo did not plan his notebooks with an audience in mind. He did not imagine future readers. This freedom allowed honesty. There was no performance, just exploration. Sometimes he wrote reminders to himself, small instructions, observations to revisit later. He trusted himself to return. Leonardo's notebooks were not linear. They jumped between subjects. They looped back on themselves. This reflected his thinking. Ideas were not confined. They moved freely. The notebook allowed this movement without judgment. In moments of doubt, Leonardo turned to writing as a form of reassurance. Putting thoughts on paper made them less heavy, less insistent. The act of writing slowed the mind. It created space. He did not aim to finish pages neatly. Some ended abruptly, thought trailing off mid-sentence. This was acceptable. Thoughts did not always conclude cleanly. Leonardo allowed incompleteness. He understood that creativity thrived in openness. A closed page was finished. An open page invited return. The notebook was never a burden. It was light, portable, ready. It asked nothing of him except attention. Leonardo's habit of keeping notebooks was not disciplined in the traditional sense. He did not write every day. He wrote when curiosity stirred. This made the practice sustainable. There was no pressure. The notebook waited patiently. It did not demand consistency. It welcomed return. In this way, Leonardo's notebooks became extensions of his mind, places where ideas could rest without urgency. They captured moments that might otherwise fade. A pattern in water, a gesture of the hand, a fleeting thought. The notebook preserved these fragments, allowing them to be revisited later, often in new light. Leonardo trusted this process. He trusted that attention, recorded gently, would lead somewhere meaningful, not quickly, but deeply. Leonardo spent long stretches of time simply watching, not with intensity, not with expectation. He watched as one might listen to a distant sound, without effort, without demand. Observation was not a task for him. It was a state of being. He did not rush to interpret what he saw. He allowed impressions to arrive slowly, layering themselves over time. When Leonardo walked through the countryside, he did not seek destinations. He allowed the path to guide him. His attention moved gently from one detail to another, a bend in a branch, the uneven surface of stone, the way dust settled on fabric. He noticed how things existed in relation to one another, how light softened edges, how shadows created depth. Nothing was isolated, everything belonged. Leonardo believed that understanding came not from looking harder, but from looking longer. He returned to the same scenes again and again, a stream viewed at different times of day, a face observed in varying moods, a bird watched through stillness rather than pursuit. Each return revealed something new. Time, he understood, was an essential element of seeing. He allowed himself to linger. Often, he watched movement rather than form. The way cloth folded when someone turned, the rhythm of walking. The slight hesitation before a gesture completed itself. These small transitions fascinated him. They spoke of balance. Leonardo did not interrupt these moments by naming them. He did not rush to categorize. He watched without claiming. In crowded places he stood slightly apart, not withdrawn, simply positioned to observe without involvement. He listened to voices blending together, noticing patterns rather than words, the rise and fall of tone, the pauses between phrases. Conversation, too, had rhythm. Leonardo paid attention to animals with the same patience. He watched how cats rested, how birds adjusted their feathers, how horses shifted weight when standing still. He noticed the quiet intelligence in these movements. They were economical, purposeful, nothing was wasted. He learned that stillness was not inactivity, it was preparation. Leonardo understood that the most important details often appeared when nothing seemed to be happening. When he observed water, he did not focus on its speed. He focused on its behavior, how it curved around obstacles, how it reflected light differently depending on depth. He saw water as a living thing. It taught him about flow, about resistance, about return. He did not disturb the water to test it. He allowed it to move as it wished. Leonardo believed that nature revealed itself willingly to those who did not interfere. He watched clouds form and dissolve. He noticed how they never repeated the same shape. This impermanence comforted him. Nothing needed to remain fixed. Even observation itself could be fluid. Leonardo's watching was not passive. It was attentive without tension. His eyes moved slowly. His breathing remained steady. He did not strain. When fatigue arrived, he rested. He believed that tired eyes distorted truth. Rest, he felt, sharpened perception. Sometimes he closed his eyes entirely, allowing the memory of what he had seen to settle. He noticed how memory softened detail, leaving behind essence. This, too, was observation. He learned to trust these internal impressions. Leonardo did not judge what he saw. He did not label scenes as beautiful or ordinary. Everything held interest. A cracked wall, a worn step, a fading mark on stone. These signs of time fascinated him. They showed process. They showed life continuing quietly. Leonardo often watched people without them noticing, not to study them as subjects, but to witness natural behavior. When people forgot they were seen, they moved differently, more honestly. Their gestures were unguarded, their expressions softened. Leonardo valued this authenticity. He did not attempt to capture it immediately. He allowed it to imprint itself gently. Later, it would surface in his work without conscious effort. Watching taught him patience. It taught him restraint. He learned that the urge to act often interrupted understanding. So he waited. He let curiosity lead without pushing. Leonardo also watched himself. He noticed how his attention shifted, how distraction crept in, how rest restored focus. He did not criticize these changes. He accepted them. He understood that observation required kindness toward oneself. Harshness clouded perception. Gentleness clarified it. Leonardo's practice of watching extended into night. He observed how darkness altered familiar spaces, how shadows deepened, how sound carried differently. Night slowed the world. He appreciated this. He watched flames flicker, noticing how light danced rather than stayed still. Fire, like water, was never static. It reminded him that movement was constant, even in stillness. Leonardo did not seek conclusions from his observations. He allowed them to exist as experiences. Some insights emerged slowly after many viewings. Others remained unspoken. He did not feel compelled to articulate everything. Understanding, he believed, did not always require expression. Sometimes it simply needed acknowledgement. Leonardo's watching was a form of respect. By observing without interference, he honored the world as it was. He did not impose meaning. He received it. This practice shaped him quietly. It influenced how he thought, how he created, how he lived. Watching taught him humility. He was not separate from what he observed. He was part of it. The boundary between observer and observed softened. Leonardo felt this connection deeply. It brought him calm. In a world that often hurried, watching allowed him to remain grounded. It slowed his inner pace. It steadied his thoughts. It reminded him that nothing needed to be forced. The world unfolded at its own rhythm. He matched it. Leonardo walked often, not to arrive anywhere in particular, but to let thought move at its own pace. Walking, for him, was not exercise, it was alignment. When his mind felt crowded, he stepped outside. When ideas felt tangled, he let his feet loosen them. He trusted that movement would create space. His walks were unhurried. He did not count steps. He did not measure distance. He allowed his pace to match his breathing, slow, even, unforced. Leonardo noticed that thoughts behaved differently when the body was in motion. Ideas that felt heavy while seated became lighter when walking. Questions that resisted answers softened into curiosity. Walking loosened certainty. It made room for wondering. He preferred paths that allowed variation. Uneven ground, winding roads, places where attention shifted naturally from step to step. A straight path required less awareness. A curved one invited presence. Leonardo paid attention to how his body responded to the terrain, how balance adjusted, how posture shifted, how the ground influenced movement. The body, he believed, was constantly learning. Walking allowed this learning to happen quietly. As he walked, Leonardo observed his surroundings without effort. The landscape entered his awareness gently. He noticed patterns repeating at different scales. The curve of a hill echoed the curve of a shoulder. The branching of roots mirrored veins in the hand. These similarities did not demand explanation. They simply existed. Leonardo felt comforted by this continuity. He did not force connections. He let them reveal themselves. Often, he walked alone. Silence suited him. In silence, his thoughts did not compete with sound. They drifted in and out without urgency. He allowed his attention to move freely, from the sensation of feet on ground, to the play of light through leaves, to the rhythm of breath. Walking anchored him in the present moment. It prevented the mind from rushing ahead. Leonardo did not replay past conversations or rehearse future plans during his walks. When such thoughts arose, he acknowledged them without resistance, then let them pass. Walking made this letting go easier. Movement carried thoughts forward, away from fixation. He noticed how the pace of walking influenced thinking. When he walked too quickly, his thoughts scattered. When he slowed, they gathered. So he chose slowness. Leonardo understood that clarity emerged from steadiness, not speed. During walks, he sometimes stopped without reason. A shape caught his eye. A sound shifted. A feeling of curiosity surfaced. He paused. There was no rush to continue. Stopping was part of walking. He stood quietly, hands relaxed, observing without analysis. These pauses allowed impressions to settle. Leonardo believed that insight often arrived when effort ceased. Walking also allowed him to feel the passage of time, the lengthening of shadows, the cooling of air, the subtle change in light as the day moved toward evening. These transitions grounded him. They reminded him that time flowed gently, without force. Leonardo did not resist this flow. He aligned with it. He noticed how walking softened his body. Muscles released tension, breath deepened. This physical ease influenced his thinking. Ideas became less rigid. Possibilities expanded. He did not seek solutions during walks. He allowed questions to accompany him without expectation. Often, answers appeared later when he was no longer seeking them. Leonardo trusted this process. Walking taught him patience. It taught him to allow thought to mature naturally. He believed that forcing ideas led to distortion. Gentle movement preserved their shape. Sometimes Leonardo walked familiar paths repeatedly. He found comfort in repetition. Each walk was similar, yet never identical. Light shifted, weather changed, his own mood varied. These subtle differences held interest. He learned that familiarity did not dull perception. It deepened it. Walking also allowed Leonardo to feel connected to his surroundings. He did not see himself as separate from the landscape. His movement disturbed the ground slightly. The ground responded. This exchange felt natural. He was part of the environment, not an observer passing through. Leonardo found peace in this belonging. When walking near water, he adjusted his pace to match its flow. When walking through forests, he softened his steps. He adapted intuitively. Walking became a dialogue. He listened with his feet. Leonardo noticed how walking influenced memory. Ideas encountered earlier in the day resurfaced gently, often in new forms. Walking reorganized thought. It allowed connections to form without strain. He did not take notes during most walks. He trusted memory. What mattered would remain. Walking was not about capturing ideas. It was about allowing them to breathe. Leonardo valued this freedom. He did not burden his walks with purpose. Purpose arrived on its own. As evening approached, his walks grew slower, light softened, sounds quieted. He welcomed this slowing. It mirrored his inner state. Walking at dusk allowed reflection without heaviness. The day loosened its grip. Leonardo returned from walks feeling settled, not energized. Calm, not stimulated. This calm carried into his work. Ideas that emerged from walking were gentle. They did not demand immediate action. They waited patiently. Leonardo respected this waiting. Walking reminded him that movement and stillness were not opposites. They supported one another. Stillness existed within motion. Motion existed within stillness. This understanding shaped his rhythm of life. He walked when thinking needed space. He rested when understanding needed depth. Neither was superior. Both were necessary. Leonardo's walks were not remarkable to others. He did not announce them. They left no record, yet they shaped him quietly. They allowed his mind to remain spacious. They prevented stagnation. They nurtured curiosity without pressure. Walking became a form of meditation, not formal, not intentional, simply lived. Leonardo did not analyze this practice. He lived it, and in doing so he found balance. Leonardo did not feel pursued by time. He was aware of it, of course. He noticed the changing seasons, the passing years, the quiet aging of his own body. But time did not press against him. It moved alongside him. Leonardo lived without urgency, not because he lacked ambition, but because he understood something others often forgot. Rushing did not create depth. It thinned it. He noticed how urgency altered behavior, how it tightened the body, shortened the breath, narrowed attention. Under pressure, details were missed. Subtleties vanished. Leonardo chose another way. He allowed time to expand. When working, he did not measure progress by completion. He measured it by clarity. If clarity was absent, he paused. Pausing was not failure, it was adjustment. Leonardo believed that work done in haste carried a residue of tension. That tension lingered, visible to those who knew how to look. He preferred work that felt calm even after it was finished. This required patience. Leonardo did not force himself to adhere to strict schedules. His days unfolded with structure, but not rigidity. Morning arrived. Light shifted, energy rose and fell. He listened to these rhythms. When his attention was sharp, he worked. When it dulled, he rested. He did not resist fatigue. Fatigue, he believed, was information. It signaled the need for balance. Leonardo observed how others reacted to time pressure. He saw anxiety creep into their movements. Decisions became hurried. Mistakes followed. This reinforced his belief. Urgency disrupted harmony. Leonardo valued harmony above speed. He accepted that some tasks required long periods of waiting. Materials needed time to settle. Ideas needed space to mature. He did not resent this waiting. He welcomed it. Waiting allowed him to observe further, to refine understanding. Leonardo did not equate productivity with constant action. He understood that stillness was productive in its own way. During periods when he appeared inactive, his mind was often working quietly, connecting ideas, resolving questions without conscious effort. These unseen processes mattered deeply. He trusted them. Leonardo also accepted that not everything needed to be finished. This acceptance brought him peace. Incomplete work did not trouble him. He viewed it as part of an ongoing process, not a deficiency. Completion was not always the goal. Sometimes exploration was enough. Leonardo lived comfortably with uncertainty. He did not feel compelled to resolve every question within a lifetime. Some things could remain open. This openness lightened his days. He did not carry the weight of expectation heavily. When expectations arose from others, he acknowledged them without internalizing pressure. He remained aligned with his own pace. Leonardo understood that urgency often came from fear. Fear of missing opportunities, fear of falling behind. He did not let fear guide his choices. He trusted continuity. He believed that steady attention, applied consistently, created its own momentum. This trust allowed him to work calmly even when others doubted his pace. He did not explain himself. Explanation was unnecessary. Time, he believed, would reveal the value of patience. Leonardo's days contained generous intervals of rest. He did not view rest as something to be earned. Rest was foundational. Without rest, attention frayed, curiosity dulled. He protected his rest. He slept when tired. He paused when overstimulated. This care preserved his sensitivity. Leonardo noticed how urgency altered perception of time. Under pressure, moments felt compressed. Under calm, they expanded. He preferred expansion. Expanded time allowed appreciation. Small details became visible. Leonardo savored these details. A shift in light across a wall. The sound of wind moving through leaves. The quiet satisfaction of a task approached gently. These moments enriched his life. He did not sacrifice them for speed. Leonardo believed that life itself was not meant to be hurried, that living quickly did not mean living fully. Fullness came from presence. Presence required time. Leonardo cultivated presence deliberately. He avoided unnecessary commitments. He chose depth over breadth. This selectiveness allowed him to remain grounded. He was not scattered. He was centered. Leonardo did not chase recognition. He understood that recognition arrived unpredictably, often long after effort was made. He did not align his pace with external validation. He aligned it with internal coherence. This coherence guided his decisions. When faced with choices, he asked not which was fastest, but which felt right. Rightness, for him, was calm. A calm decision left no residue of doubt. urgency left traces. Leonardo avoided these traces. He noticed how a life without urgency felt spacious. Days did not blur together. Each held its own texture. He remembered days distinctly. This clarity pleased him. Leonardo accepted aging without resistance. He noticed changes in energy, in focus, in physical ability. He adjusted. He did not attempt to maintain earlier speeds. He honored his current rhythm. This acceptance prevented strain. Leonardo believed that forcing oneself against natural rhythm led to disharmony. He chose harmony. Even in moments of external pressure, he returned to slowness internally. He breathed, he observed, he waited. This internal calm acted as an anchor. Leonardo's life unfolded without dramatic peaks or frantic lows. It moved steadily, like a river untroubled by rocks. This steadiness sustained him. He did not burn out. He did not fragment. He remained whole. Living without urgency did not mean living without purpose. It meant allowing purpose to unfold naturally. Leonardo trusted that meaningful work emerged from sustained attention, not from haste. This trust shaped his legacy quietly. Not through volume, but through depth. Leonardo's life, viewed from a distance, appeared calm. From within, it felt aligned. Time did not chase him, it accompanied him. And in this companionship, he found peace. Leonardo did not think often about legacy. The word itself suggested distance, something future-facing, something abstract. He lived instead in the present, attentive to the work before him, the light in the room, the rhythm of his days. What remained after him was not his concern. He trusted that whatever needed to endure would do so naturally. As the years passed, Leonardo's pace softened further. His movements grew slower, his gestures more deliberate. He adjusted without resistance. There was no sense of loss, only change. He continued to observe, even when physical effort became more difficult. Observation required little exertion. It only asked for attention. Leonardo's curiosity did not fade. It matured. Questions became quieter. They did not press as urgently. They rested comfortably in his awareness, like familiar companions. He no longer felt compelled to pursue every line of inquiry. Some ideas were complete simply by being considered. Leonardo spent more time in stillness, sitting by windows, watching light move across walls, listening to distant sounds without identifying their source. These moments felt full. He reflected not by reviewing accomplishments, but by noticing continuity. The same patterns he observed in youth remained present: flow, balance, gradual change. Nothing had been wasted. Even unfinished work felt complete in its own way. Leonardo did not regret what he had left unresolved. He understood that a single life could not contain all understanding. Limits were natural. Acceptance brought peace. Those around him sometimes wondered why he remained so calm, why he did not hurry to complete what others considered important. Leonardo did not explain. He had learned long ago that calm needed no defense. He trusted that meaning was not dependent on completion. It lived in the process. Leonardo's notebooks accumulated quietly. They did not form a single narrative. They were fragments of attention, moments preserved without intention of publication. He did not organize them for posterity. He allowed them to remain as they were. This felt honest. He believed that knowledge, when shared too aggressively, lost its subtlety. His notes were meant to be discovered slowly, if at all. They were whispers, not declarations. Leonardo accepted that others would interpret his work in ways he could not control. This did not trouble him. Interpretation was part of continuity. Once something left his hands, it lived independently. Leonardo's influence unfolded gradually, not through loud recognition, but through quiet resonance. People noticed the calm embedded in his work, the balance, the patience. These qualities lingered. They traveled silently across time. Leonardo did not measure success by how widely he was known. He measured it by alignment, between observation and expression, between curiosity and restraint. By that measure, he felt content. His later days were marked by simplicity, fewer possessions, fewer obligations. This simplicity felt spacious. He had learned that accumulation often created noise. He preferred quiet. Leonardo spent time remembering not events, but sensations. The feeling of walking along familiar paths, the texture of paper beneath his hand, the sound of water moving steadily. These memories were gentle. They did not intrude. They accompanied him. As his physical strength waned, his inner steadiness remained. He did not resist this shift. Resistance would have disrupted harmony. Leonardo remained attentive to his body's needs. He rested when tired. He moved when movement felt natural. He listened. This listening had guided him throughout his life. It continued to guide him now. Leonardo did not fear the end of life. He viewed it as another transition, unknown but not threatening. He had observed enough natural cycles to trust that endings were not abrupt. They softened into beginnings. Leaves fell. Water returned to the sea. Light faded into darkness. These transitions were gentle. Leonardo trusted that life followed similar patterns. He did not seek certainty. He accepted mystery. This acceptance brought ease. Those who spent time with him noticed his quiet presence. He did not dominate conversation. He listened more than he spoke. When he spoke, his words were measured. He did not offer conclusions. He offered observations. Leonardo's calm influenced those around him without effort. It slowed conversations. It softened tensions. He did not intend this effect. It arose naturally. This too became part of his legacy. Not a doctrine, not a method, a way of being. Leonardo's life demonstrated that depth did not require urgency, that curiosity did not require noise, that understanding grew best in stillness. Long after his passing, people would return to his work seeking insight. They would find complexity, brilliance, innovation. But beneath all of it lay something quieter: patience, attention, respect for time. Leonardo's true legacy was not what he created, but how he created it. With care, with openness, with calm. He showed that a life lived slowly could reach far. That observation could shape the world without force. That curiosity, held gently, endured. Leonardo's presence receded without disturbance, like a shadow lengthening at dusk, like light dimming without drama. The world continued. His influence remained, quietly.